Yesterday,
Is it still an option?
Iran called to negotiate. Yesterday, the leaders of Iran called. They want to negotiate. I think they're tired of being beat up by the United States.
Are you sharing details on that call?
Iran wants to negotiate. Yes.
Negotiate what?
We may meet with them. I mean, a meeting is being set up, but we may have to act because of what's happening before the meeting.
Right.
But a meeting is being set up.
Hello, friends. I have brought you another episode on Iran because things are heating up quite a bit. As you saw in this clip, Trump is saying that he may have to strike Iran, even though they have approached him for negotiations. And there's a lot of discussion going on within the administration. In fact, there was an Axios article which mentions the options that have been placed before Trump. Most of these options are non-kinetic. That is, they include cyber and other kinds of sabotage. And there are only a few kinetic options, which shows that the US military also doesn't have a lot of options ready yet. Maybe they don't have forces in place, or they don't want the blowback, because once Trump is given options, you know, Trump usually goes for the hammer. So they have probably decided not to give him maybe. So we can see that there are a large number of US bases around Iran. And if US wants to strike, it can. But Iran has also warned that it will strike back. It will strike at US bases, etc. Now, this might just be a exaggerated threat from Iran, and maybe Iran won't do it. But it depends on how threatened the regime feels and how big the US strikes are. You know, is the US strike against the IRGC and Basij paramilitaries only, or is it against the leadership? That is a decapitation strike against Khamenei, the supreme leader. So this is a complicated picture, and Trump's credibility is on the line, because he has openly said several times that if protesters are killed, then he will attack. And the fact is, a lot of protesters have been killed. Upwards of 500, and maybe even up to 1,000 or more have been killed. But these protesters, I must say, also some of them have killed security forces. So more than 50, and maybe even upward of that, security forces have also been killed. And mosques have been set on fire, etc. Well, the regime doesn't appear to be ready to collapse because, as I've mentioned earlier, there is a support base for the regime within the country. About 22% of the popular vote went to the hardline candidate, Jalili. We can assume this 22% is the core vote support base of the regime. And these are the people who populate the IRGC and come out on the streets in favor of the government in demonstrations and populate the Basij, the paramilitary of the government. So it's not so simple that the government will simply be just, taken out. But as you can see on the screen, the human cost has been massive. People are crying, and a lot of people have been killed. People have been killed earlier as well. I mean, in the Masa Amini protests of 2022, also upward of 500 people were killed and thousands were arrested. And same thing this time. Maybe even as many as 10,000 have been arrested. You can see images of a mosque being set on fire on your screens. Now, the question is, what are the stakes involved? Well, the Iranian regime knows that it's in trouble because economically things are going south for a long time, and now precipitously so, as I explained in my previous videos. In fact, the currency keeps dropping and inflation keeps skyrocketing. And that is part of the reason for the anger. This anger is not purely political this time, it's also economic. So the regime, within the regime, a lot of talk is going on. One set of people are saying, let's sideline Khamenei and try and have someone else as a leader. That would be kind of acceptable to the US and Israel also, because the US, at least to the US, because of the experience with Venezuela. And there is also talk going on within the regime of negotiating with the Americans seriously. Americans have taken a very hard line on negotiations, possibly pushed by Israel and the Zionist lobby within the US. Now, just to show you the power of the Zionist lobby, it's not just APEC. There are individual donors who are huge. I'm just going to show you a video of somebody who donated $250 million. A single individual, the Adelson family, donated $250 million in Trump's campaign, just so that he would favor Israel. And Trump, being Trump, is remarkably frank, and he has openly said it. I was actually quite surprised that he openly said it, but I shouldn't have been, considering Trump, he does everything in the open. He openly says that they have given me, and they'll give me again $250 million for the next election. They've promised. There's 2028. They're telling me to run, and all they want is Israel, policy in favor of Israel, nothing else. So there is a very close. So when people say there is a triangle, that is Israel, America, Iran, I don't think so. I think there is just a two-way thing. Israel runs America's foreign policy in the Middle East, and I'll do a separate video on how that happens and has happened over the last many decades. But and on the other side is Iran. So this is just bipolar. It's not a triangle at all. So have a look at this video. It's a short video.
Miriam gave my campaign indirectly and directly $250 million. She was number one. When somebody can give you $250 million, I think that we should give her the opportunity to say hello. And Miriam, make it quick, because $250 million is not what it used to be. Okay?
Now I met Alan Dershowitz, and he said the legal thing about 4 more years. And I say, Alan, I agree with you. So we can do it. Yeah.
She said, think about it. I'll give you another $250 million.
I will give.
But her husband, Sheldon, was an amazing guy. And he'd come up to the office. And there was nobody more aggressive than Sheldon. I think I spent more time with him and you, because you usually came up together. But he'd call and say, can I come over, please? I say, Sheldon, I'm president of the United States. It doesn't work that way anymore. It's like maybe tomorrow. How about tomorrow? No, please, just for a little while. And I would, he'd always say 10 minutes. It turned out to be about an hour and a half, right? And what he did is he fought for Israel. That's all he really fought for. He just wanted to take care of Israel.
Okay, so I just thought you would enjoy seeing this. So what is Israel's interest here? Let me explain. Israel and Netanyahu in particular have always wanted a divided and kind of destroyed Middle East. They want, whether it's Iran or the Arabs, to be destroyed and divided. They don't want a united. So Netanyahu, even though he endorses regime change in Iran, he doesn't want it. Now, you would be surprised. You'd be saying, what? He doesn't want regime change in Iran? Yes. He never wanted regime change even in Syria. Despite his claims, it was not because of him that Syria's regime was changed. And I'll come to all of that, the long-term arc of Israeli and American foreign policy, basically Israeli foreign policy, which is American foreign policy in the Middle East. But why he doesn't want it, and there's an article from an Israeli source, from Haaretz, why he doesn't want it. This article mentions only that he needs an enemy for internal political consumption. That is because of the elections coming up in Israel this year. He wants some threats to be there, and a regime change will take that away, because he's got a lot of internal problems, including, apart from the elections, the cases against him, and also the Haredi service, that is ultra-Orthodox Jews don't serve in the Israeli military, and so that's creating a problem. So what he wants is that it continue, a threat, a bogeyman in Iran, even though actually Iran is pretty much powerless. It has neither nuclear weapons nor any other kind of weapons. And even whatever the axis of resistance was has been taken out. He and Israel, over the long term, have had the policy not to have a unified, for example, Syria, which is powerful. So they wanted the civil war in Syria to continue for as long, and Syria to get devastated. Even now, they have encouraged the Druze to rebel. They have encouraged the Kurds in Syria not to integrate and fight with the Syrian government. They have encouraged the Alawites to rebel, and they keep providing these people arms and weapons, etc. They don't want a unified Syria. They don't want a unified Iraq also. They keep helping the Kurds and different groups there. In fact, they're using the Kurdish area in Iraq to spy. To the signals intelligence and listening devices are in the Kurdish area in Iraq. So they want, similarly, they destroyed, of course, Palestine completely, repeatedly, and Lebanon. Ever since the 70s, they kept interfering, 60s, 70s. They fueled the civil war in a particular way. So they want an Iran which is possibly fragmented, because Iran has a lot of minorities, and they are also restive. The Balochis and the Azaris, and most importantly, the Kurds. And they kind of are encouraging them. They have spies, they have money, etc. So I'm not saying this whole rebellion is being funded by Israel, but a larger part of it, and also the insistence on zero enrichment. The policy that the US under Trump has been following is zero enrichment within Iran. Iran will have to send out every gram of even minorly, not highly enriched, minorly enriched uranium. It can't even keep it for its nuclear power plants. If it wants for its nuclear power plants, then it will be provided. And unlimited inspections anywhere, anytime. It was something that not only this Iranian government, but possibly any Iranian leader could not have agreed to. And Netanyahu knew it, Israelis knew it. And probably Trump was also told that this wouldn't work. But as you can see, the amount of money that's flowing into Trump and various political parties within the United States, and they can't resist it. They have to comply with Israel's requests. And so they pushed Iran into, first of all, this position by putting the sanctions for so long, and so extreme sanctions. Obama didn't listen to them and went ahead with the JCPOA, but they sabotaged the JCPOA, Netanyahu, etc., and through Trump exited it in 2018, and then pressurized the Europeans. Believe me, the Israeli lobby, the Zionist lobby, has a lot of power in European capitals also. After all, the Balfour Agreement was signed by the British for a reason. They were running out of money in the First World War. They needed money from the from the bankers who kind of supported Israel. The Rothschilds I'm talking about. Netanyahu is not here, despite what he might be saying, to support democracy, etc., in Iran. And the Iranian protesters are paying a price. They probably came out in much larger numbers than they would have, and were more aggressive. Possibly even within them, there were some plants from Israel, because they expected the United States to support them with force. So there is pressure on Trump, because he promised. Earlier, US presidents haven't gotten involved in the Iranian protests, neither Biden nor Obama, at least not directly, maybe covertly, but not directly. But Trump has promised, so he has to deliver. So he's under pressure. But who to strike? I mean, if you strike very hard, you end up collapsing the regime and creating chaos, which is not in American interest. America does not want a destroyed Middle East, because it will become a source of insurgency, danger to the Gulf Arab states. Also, it can lead to the kind of situation in Syria. Even in Syria, the United States wants a unified Syria. In fact, it's been trying quite hard to make an agreement between the Syrian government and the Kurds. But Israel has been encouraging the Kurds and bombing constantly Damascus. More than 1,000 strikes by Israelis on the Syrians, even after Assad has left. And they have not only kept the Golan Heights, which is Syrian territory since 73, but they have also taken a huge extra corridor, and they keep incursions and keep destroying Syrian villages around. They destroy their roads, water supplies, burn their olive fields, kill them quite often, because they want to drive them away from there. They want a huge buffer zone all the way up to Damascus for Greater Israel. So, so now what's happening here is that not only do the Iranians government feel threatened because of its economic situation, and they're willing to negotiate. Now, this could be a ploy to prevent American attacks, but it could also be an attempt by the Iranians to actually remove the sanctions. Maybe the internal factions have come to the decision that, look, if we don't remove the sanctions, the economy will keep going down, and protesters will come back, and the country can economically collapse. So the regime may not collapse politically, but it may collapse economically. And so we must make a deal. But Trump said that, as you saw in this video, that a strike will have to happen before the negotiation. And let's see where the strike happens. If they strike too hard, they break it, as I said. If they strike too little, if the strike is too little, then the protesters feel disheartened and they feel shortchanged. And their future behavior will then be modulated because American promises are not true. Trump's promises are not true. So a complicated situation for the Americans, and maybe there might be retaliation from the Iranians also on American basis. The Gulf Arab states also don't want Iran to be destroyed. They want to weaken Iran, but they don't want it destroyed because they know what can come out of that chaos, and it'll make life hell. This dream of Dubai and this, what is called Las Vegas on the Gulf will get wrecked. So will the Saudi oil refineries, the Qatari gas fields. It'll be a disaster for the Gulf if Iran goes up because it's a huge country. It's 90 million. And Iran might end up itself into a civil war because, as I said, about 20% of the population is hardcore regime supporters. So they may mount an insurgency. The IRGC is still very strong. The what's called the Revolutionary Guard. They're still very strong. And they're the Praetorian Guard of the regime. So there are factors within is Iran, which make it a very explosive situation. There's an explosive situation, or at least a complicated situation for the US and the Gulf Arabs and the US military bases. If you see an image of the US military bases, they are all within, say, 150 kilometers or 200 kilometers, at the most 300 kilometers of the Iranian shoreline. They can all be attacked. There are also many naval assets the US has in the Gulf. Luckily for now, there are no US aircraft carriers in that area which can be struck. Usually there are 1 or 2 aircraft carriers also, but they are away right now. As you can see, there are lots of airfields and there are lots of other naval assets like destroyers, cruisers, etc. And of course, there'll be several nuclear submarines close by, which we don't know where they are actually. So it's a complicated situation. And I have a feeling that the US would have to strike because it's also a credibility issue for Trump. And Trump is usually big on credibility. I mean, until he's not, which is he can also backpedal very quickly. But this would be a loss of face, and he's coming out of a high, having done Venezuela. Of course, Venezuela was in a way much easier also because, as we now know, their air defense equipment was not working. Even though they had the S-300 Russian, it was not plugged in. Nor did they have proper maintenance or spare parts, etc. Possibly the Russians had, in fact, encouraged a deterioration. Possibly not to make America angry, because if an American plane had been brought down, this would be very bad for Russia. When she was negotiating with them earlier, many years ago, in the Trump first administration, they had said that they can hand over Venezuela to the US if US turned a blind eye to Ukraine, that hand over Ukraine to us. So Russia was willing to sell Ukraine. Russia was willing to sell Venezuela. That's the kind of deal making that Putin does. Or it could have been also that Russia is just severely engaged in Ukraine, doesn't have spare capacity. But those air defense equipment Russian was not plugged in, was not working. Secondly, even despite that, the pilot of one of the Chinooks, the helicopters, was shot 3 times in his leg, and the helicopter could have crashed. That would have been another Black Hawk Down incident like Mogadishu in 92, 93. So maybe Trump feels emboldened and wants to also do something. So keep watching this space. I think big change is coming to Iran. As I mentioned in the previous video, that the Iranian regime has a solid base and may or may not fall, but a strong man may emerge in Iran. That is either from within the IRGC or within the regime. A strong man may emerge because right now the regime is very distributed. Khamenei is 86 years old. He's also weakening. So power is very distributed in the system. The reformers don't have much power. That is Larajani and Pezeshkian, the president. They're reformists, but they don't have much power. And power is more with the hardliners. But if a palace coup takes place or there is takeover by some external actor from within the politics of Iran, but not, I don't mean external to the regime completely, but maybe not within the core group. And Khamenei himself may want to hand over power to such a person because he's aging, he doesn't have solutions, and things are going south, and there might be pressure that, look, we need to sign a deal with the Americans. And decision-making will then get centralized in one person. And that one person can then maybe pull the regime out of its, at least its economic miseries, and maybe pacify the population a bit. Because the large majority of the population is angry about the economy. It's not, there must be some people who are angry with the politics as well. I mean, not maybe, but there are, but that's not the majority. The majority, because if that was the majority, then you would have seen them in the previous protests, whereas these protests are larger than all previous protests because a kind of perfect storm has hit Iran. Due to the environmental problems, Iran is very short on water right now. In fact, Tehran is running out of water. There is a massive defeat to Israel and America in the 12-day war in June, which has taken away the prestige and the legitimacy of the government that it will keep the people safe. There were bombings all over Iran and civilians were killed and a great insecurity created. And the legitimacy of the regime is down. Plus, there is this massive economic crisis. The currency has fallen so massively that it's lost like 60% of its value, now maybe even more. The bazaars have been shut now for 2 weeks. No commercial activity. In food inflation is like 80%. Overall inflation is out of control. So it seems to be both a perfect storm for the Iranian regime from external and from internal forces. So keep watching. Let's see where this goes. We hope that there are no more loss of life and bloodshed. And see you soon.
Do you think they want to engage diplomatically with you?
They do. They called
They called you? Is it still
Yesterday.
an option? Is it still an option?
Iran called to negotiate.
Yesterday.
Yesterday, the leaders of Iran called. They want to negotiate. I think they're tired of being beat up by the United States.
Can you share any details on that call?
Iran wants to negotiate. Yes.
Negotiate what?
We may meet with them. I mean, a meeting is being set up, but we may have to act because of what's happening.